Hi, we're from VYP, and we'll now be starting our VYP Student Fair, and we'll shortly begin your interview in which we'll talk about your choice of studies and your life as a university student there. So to start off, could you introduce yourself for a bit?
Currently, I'm at Stanford University. I'm an undergraduate senior, and my majors are computer science and theater and performance studies. Stanford University is based in California, US.
My name is Long, and I go to the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and I'm majoring in electrical engineering, and I'm planning on minoring in business as well.
Could you tell us a little bit about why you chose your course?
I think I knew I wanted to do engineering, but I wasn't really sure which engineering field I specifically wanted to do. I think colleges in the US and Canada, you can go in without really knowing what you want to do, and then after that first year or that first semester, then you can declare your major. And I think that was a really helpful process for me to be more exposed to all the possible majors I could do. And I ended up liking electrical engineering more.
And I applied to a bunch of schools, actually. I think I applied to almost 14 schools because I was just very adamant about going to the US. I didn't really care if I went to a good school or not. I just wanted to go abroad and experience some new things. And America seemed, far away enough to give me some new experiences and meet new people. So that was actually why I chose the US. I know that a lot of my peers also wanted to go to the UK, but I didn't feel like I was very sure, I wasn't sure enough about what I wanted to study at the time. And so the universities in the US have the flexibility of you just being able to choose your major once you got into the school. So unlike in the UK where you actually apply for your major, in the US you apply to a school and then afterwards you decide what you actually want to study. So that seemed like a great option for me. And I chose Stanford because, it was one of the better schools that I got into. And I was actually deciding between Stanford and Northwestern. For Northwestern, I actually got into a theater program. But at the time, I wasn't sure if I was ready to commit to doing exclusively theater. So Stanford seemed like a better option because it was more flexible.
So now we'll move on to the application process section. So yeah, could you tell us briefly about the application process in your country or university? So basically, could you give us a maybe brief outline? And because I know that in US there's early action and normal application kind of deadlines. So could you also explain how it looks like?
Right. So there's this thing called early action and early decision, and there's also regular decision. For early action differs from early decision in a sense that for both you apply early, but from my understanding, for early action, if you get in, you may or may not choose to go to the school. But for early decision, if you get in, you have to go to the school. How they check that, I'm not sure. And for regular decision, the application deadline is usually beginning of the year in January or the end of the year in December, prior. For the components for the application process, there are quite a few. One, there's schoolwork that you have to do, so all your grades at school. And then there is the Common App, where you report all your grades and how you did at school, all your extracurriculars and things like that. So that's the common application. And part of the common application is also the essays, where there's a Common App essay. So this is the large essay that you send to all of the universities. And each university will ask you to write other shorter essays specific to that school. And then the last component would be standardized testing. I don't know, I guess depending on like what year you are in right now, you may or may not be required to do standardized tests, because what I'm hearing is that a bunch of schools are thinking about getting rid of the SATs. But when I was applying, I had to do the general SATs and the SAT-2s, which are the subject tests. And because we're also international, we're expected to do also IELTS or TOEFLs, which are basically language tests.
What are the things that your school looks out for in their prospective students? Do they like mainly look for grades, or do they look at the essays or like other extracurricular achievements?
I think for like big schools like Stanford, it's hard to tell what they're looking for because there's so many applicants that honestly it does feel like luck at times. Obviously, like they are looking for good students, so like it would be nice to have good grades, good standardized testing scores. But I think that they also consider give a lot of weight to the essay writing. So making sure that, you don't you don't just write anything on your essays, but actually put in the work. My strategy was to be as honest and sincere as possible, and write about the things that are important to me as a person. Because I think that the essays in the US are also different from the UK in that they're mostly asking about your personality and your values and who you are as a person, rather than just asking about your credentials, which is the case in the UK. So just really trying to paint a very vivid and accurate picture about who you are as a person and what you have been doing in your high school career and what is the thing that you spent the most time on. So essays are an important part, and I think that the thing that helped me actually get into Stanford was the interview. Obviously, this is my personal case where I got to read my file, and then I think I got a really good recommendation from my interviewer. So.
And could you give us some examples of modules that you have in your course?
Yeah, so the modules that I have might be a little bit non-standard because I am double majoring. So on the CS side, there are different kinds of concentrations. There is an AI concentration. There's a systems concentration. So you would be learning all about security, or about operating systems. There's also an HCI concentration, which is a human computer interaction concentration, and a bunch of others that I'm probably blanking on right now. So depending on what concentration you're choosing, you can choose your courses accordingly. My track is AI, so I had some machine learning courses or reinforcement learning courses, and right now I'm taking a computer vision course. And for theater, for example, I am an acting concentration, but the theater major for Stanford is kind of broad, and you can do theater making and acting at the same time. So I can take directing classes, I can take performance making classes while also taking acting classes, like movement for the actor, and things like that.
So in terms of education level and method of teaching, how could you comment on that about your university?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the quality of teaching is very good overall, but again, it's a very different experience from being in high school. I think it's just the way it is. You have to go to lectures and they just talk to you and speak to you and you listen, and then you go home and do homework and stuff, and then you actually understand it. Not like in high school where it's a mix in class. So you have to put in a lot of time into understanding the content yourself. But again, the professors are there to help you. You just need to reach out to them. So I think it's a very different style of learning. And at first, not everyone's gonna adapt to it really quickly. but you just need to like, I don't know, you really need to like put yourself out there. And if you need help, don't be afraid to ask for help.
I think that Stanford is a really good school for opportunities and like meeting faculty that like very, very accomplished. And I mean, it depends on the class, right? There are some lecturers that are like, I think I've met some of the kindest faculty members here that are always like ready to help you, ready to like find you like things to work on, like research opportunities, internship opportunities. And they're also ready to work with you. Like if you don't understand anything, you can always come to their office hours. And they'll explain it to you, and they'll do that really gladly, because I think a lot of the Stanford faculty are just very passionate about what they do. And oftentimes, especially like in CS, in the CS major, they're trying to make like classes fun. So for many of the introductory classes, I would have my professors like dress up as Jedi for Halloween, or like make Kesha references, just so like some stuff sticks in your brain. So I think it's very like casual and chill, which is like very specific to the California vibe and the Silicon Valley vibe, where people just wear shorts and t-shirts to work. But sometimes also there are the types of professors that, you know, whose main thing is like doing their research. So they're not going to put in as much work into making sure that you understand things. And the lectures might be a little bit convoluted, and it's going to be up to you to understand the material. So I think that you should also be prepared to be able to do that. And so there's a wide range of types of lecturers, but generally I would say that in terms of like the, you know, student and teacher relationship, it's very casual, and usually you can definitely rely on teachers, and if you need help, they're going to be able to like explain things in a way that you need it to be explained.
Does your like system of teaching include like, you know, lectures and then individual learning? Yeah, could you tell us a bit if you have like, you know, lectures, seminars and stuff like that?
Yeah, there are definitely seminars, so you can take those. There's also usually classes. I guess it also depends on the major. I can speak more closely about, you know, the CS major and the theater major. So for CS, those are usually big lecture halls, because CS is the biggest major at Stanford. So usually what you're going to do is you're going to go to lecture twice or 3 times a week. And then sometimes some courses have labs offered, or sections where you get to like congregate in a smaller group of people, and then just like do a little bit of coding with a section leader. A section leader is usually like a grad student or even like an undergraduate student that just like helps facilitate these things, and you can ask all the questions that you need during those sections, and it's like easier because there's not as many people. Outside of section, there's also office hours. So if you have trouble like with your homework, or you have trouble like understanding some key concepts, you can also go to office hours with TAs or with the professor, him or herself. And usually that's the structure of the CS classes. Obviously there are exams, there are assignments. It's not like you don't really get as close of a relationship to the professor or like the TA as like in a tutorial. I feel like that's a more intimate setting. There's just, I think, too many students. Whereas in the theater department is much smaller in Stanford. Usually you get classes, you don't have sections. Classes are more discussion based. They're not like presentation based like in CS in a big lecture hall, because it's so intimate. It's like about like max 10 people in a class in the theater department. You get to talk to the professor much more. There's also like because it's theater, you have a bunch of rehearsals, and you just like do a lot of like physical acting work. And that's usually the structure. It's mostly like free form and like much more intimate.
I'd say probably like 20 hours of classes, like just purely going to class. Math is like notoriously bad here in terms of like how much work they give you. And even though I only have 4 hours of class, they give us about 11 hours of homework. But that's like, I would say that's like one of the worst classes in terms of how much work they give you. But then there are other classes, like, for example, like my economics class, which is about the same amount of time I spend in class every week, but the homework maybe like an hour a week. So it really depends on the classes you're taking. In the US, since you have so much freedom in like, you can take like whatever class you want. You just need to fulfill like all the credits when you're done. And then like, of course, like the core requirements. So for example, I have 128 credits that I need to complete in order to graduate. And a credit basically means like 1 hour of class per week. So for example, my math class, since I spend 4 hours a week in class, that's a 4-credit class. You know, not every class gives the same amount of work to do. So you need to really balance that out. Like here, people, like everyone says, you shouldn't take more than 2 like math or like computer science classes at the same time. That will like mess you up. Like it's like not a good idea. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is like it's really important to like understand your schedule and understand how much work each class is going to give you.
How was your financial situation? Was there any financial aid, or like did you need anything? And what were your school fees?
So the way it works in the US, since it's like kind of like very late stage capitalism almost, the private schools are the ones that are able to give out the most money. So like Harvard has like, I don't know, like $10 billion in endowment or something. So they can like easily like give like full rides to students. But then like state schools, even if they're super rich, they just aren't obligated to, or at least it reflects badly on having spent like partially public funds on like giving full rides to like non-US citizens. You know what I mean? Because they have like an obligation to like the people who live in their state. So they should be giving like the full rides to like for example, at the University of Michigan, they should be giving all that money to like lower income people in Michigan rather than like people outside, which makes sense because it's like the University of Michigan and they do get money from the state and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I don't have any like financial aid because I'm an international student and we just don't do that.
So as an international student, do you see a large gap in fees compared to?
Large gap compared to like people from Michigan, but actually pretty similar compared to like, I guess, other people in the US that aren't in state.
And do you live in a school dorm or like a private housing? And how are those expenses?
Yeah, so for most universities, they'll make you stay like in the dorm for your first year. And yeah, so I'm in a dorm because it's my first year. And the fees are they're not like super expensive, but like if you live outside and you find the right place, it's obviously going to be cheaper. But it's like very convenient because there's like the dining hall and you don't have to cook for yourself. Living on your own in university is like a big difference. And living in a dorm is like a nice transition in between.
So I think that so Stanford offers financial aid, and I think for American students it's need blind. For international students it's need based. I think I'm blanking on like what the difference between those two were. I think it like for when I was applying, they were still considering your financial situation and whether or not like you actually got in. That's only for international students. For like American students, it was that they don't look at your financial situation at all and they just let you in. They might be changing that around this time. I'm not completely updated on this fact. But the tuition is around like $50,000. And then they're looking at additional like some expenses, and then like it all comes down to like about $80,000 per year. But they're like kind of like adding health insurance into that, and they're also looking at your pocket money, and that's like that all sums up to like $80,000 in their estimation. With that said, Stanford again offers financial aid. So for anyone who can't afford that but got into the school, they're gonna make sure that like you can't afford to go to school. Like the financial situation should not be the thing that prohibits you from going to the school.
And could you tell us like a bit about how to apply for financial aid? Because I believe like you apply for it like when you're during your application, like university application, or like early in the year.
I'm not sure about the deadlines. That's something you're gonna have to look. And it's I'm not sure if it's like school specific, but it's good to look at each school that you're applying to and what the deadlines are. But yes, the common application and the school application is separate from the financial aid application. And usually it is the case that if you are choosing to, if you know that you're going to have to rely on financial aid in order to be able to go to school, you have to apply at the same time when you're like applying to the school. So you send in your common application, and there's a separate financial aid application. And if you did not submit your financial aid application at the time of applying to the school as a high school student, then you won't be able to apply for financial aid afterwards. Like once you got into the school and then you're in university, you won't be able to apply for financial aid because you didn't apply as a high school student before. So usually financial aid is enough for like all 4 years of like you're guaranteed to get financial aid for all 4 years of your undergraduate studies, if that's actually financial aid. There's also things like merit-based scholarships, which I'm not sure about. I don't know how that works, but that's a different thing, and that's also very school specific because some schools don't even offer merit-based scholarships. And so I think usually the financial aid application is through CSS. That's the platform. And then I think that the deadlines are slightly after the common app application, but that's something you guys have to check. And usually it's something that you have to fill out and your parents have to fill out.
Those scholarships cover only like school tuition fees, or like, you know, maybe like accommodation and like everyday expenses as well?
So financial aid is just, so the difference between merit-based scholarships and financial aid is that financial aid is based on your family needs and your family financial situation. So they look at, you know, you're going to have to send in your parents' tax documents, their annual income, and based on that, they're going to estimate how much financial assistance they need to provide to you in order for you to be able to go to school. So some of them will cover like, and then like once they estimate that, they will give you like an offer letter of how much money you might be able to get from the school. And, you know, it differs based on like your family situation. You may have all of your tuition covered. You may have part of your tuition covered. You may have your tuition and, you know, healthcare covered and like part of your accommodation covered. It all really depends on your family financial situation. Whereas like merit-based scholarships are just like a preset sum, and usually you should probably know what the amount is that you're applying for. But yeah, and that's not based on like your financial need. It's based on like how good of a student you are.
Did you have like any opportunities? Did you have like any opportunities opportunities for internships or like getting work experience like suggested by your school, or did you like have to, let's say, apply for it yourself, look for different companies and stuff like that?
So again, Stanford is a great school for like opportunities, especially if you're thinking about working in tech because it's based in Silicon Valley. So there's a bunch of career fairs and a bunch of people who are coming in to like advertise their startups or their companies, and you can just like talk to them and give your resume to them at the career fairs. But you still apply yourself. So there are several ways in which you can get an internship. You can go to those career fairs. You can like learn about these companies and apply yourself. There's also this platform called Handshake, where a bunch of companies are also posting like job postings on there, knowing that this is directed to like specifically to Stanford students. So there's a lot of interesting and good companies there. There's also a lot of programs at Stanford University where, the university kind of has partners and they're kind of helping you connect with the partner. You still have to send in your own resume and write probably a cover letter, but there's like a certain understanding and like a close relationship between the university and the hiring company. So it might be a little bit easier. So you can get, and also you can get grants from the university where perhaps they have a partnership with a company, but they are not able to pay for you. So the university is going to pay for you. So there's like a bunch of different ways to apply for internship. I would say that Stanford is really good for like finding partners and like interesting companies that just like come to the school and you learn about through the university. But most of the work and like applying is still like something you have to do on your own.
Is it easy to find employment in your country, like in your opinion?
I think also, again, it depends on like what field you're trying to find a job in, right? I'd say that one of the reasons why I wanted to go to America was because of like employment opportunities, especially like in tech. I think that there are a lot of opportunities, and especially in here where I am based, there's tons of companies looking for people to work. And I think that the internship culture in America might be a little bit better than in Poland. Like there's definitely more opportunities, I'd say. Again, that's stemming from the mindset of like, those companies, they understand that you're an undergraduate student and that you still have a lot to learn. But I think they're more ready to like give you an internship and teach you on the job because they see like the potential in you that you can stay and then actually be a valuable worker for them. So I'd say that there's a lot of opportunities here. I've had a chance to work with like some companies. Yeah, I'd say that like for tech jobs, there's definitely a market. For theater, theater is hard everywhere in the world. So it's competitive, but there are opportunities.
I've been able to like do a bunch of like small like internship interviews because like if you want to join a career fair, you can if you want. But obviously, since it's my first year, it's really hard to like land an internship. Hoping I can get one next year, but there are a lot of opportunities to get one. You just have to like be active. But then the other thing that I'm doing, which is really like interesting, is there are a lot of clubs at my school, and one of them is like Formula SAE, which I don't know if you've heard of, but it's basically like this thing around the world where like universities build like Formula race cars and race against each other, and like it's like a really fun, but also like something you can put on your resume as well. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that like going towards like the whole career path and like finding internships and jobs and stuff like that, it doesn't necessarily always have to be interviewing for summer internships and then from those internships going up and building off that. Of course, that's like very important. But then you can also start working to that, like by doing, you know, like project teams and like clubs at your university, because in most large universities, they have the same like project teams. Yeah, because for example, like the Formula SAE thing, that's something that you can find like all over Europe as well. Pretty much every technical engineering university has like that program too.
Could you tell us a bit about its social aspect? For example, how would you describe the community, you know, at Stanford? Or are there like any clubs, associations, communities, and stuff like that?
Yeah. So again, Stanford is like a big university. So obviously there are a lot of clubs and activities. I'm very active in like a lot of theater societies, which is kind of surprising because you wouldn't think that there's a lot of theater going on at Stanford, but there's a lot of theater groups. There's a lot of CS groups, robotics, maths. There's also like a lot of cultural groups, so you can be like part of the Vietnamese community at Stanford, you know, a lot of minority groups as well. So yeah, I'm sure like if you come here, you can take your pick. You'll definitely find a society that you can find yourself being a part of. There's also a cappella. And in terms of like the social life, I'd say that generally people here are like kind, and each person is trying to help you out. Everybody is also like really driven and usually interested in the things that they do. So there's a lot to learn from your peers. And because it is like a university with like a lot of different schools, you have the School of Humanities, you have the School of Engineering, you have the School of Medicine. You can like learn from each other, like from your respective fields. And also, yeah, I think that generally the culture at Stanford is something that people like to describe. This is kind of embarrassing, but they like to describe it as like nerd nation. So like, I think the stereotypical Stanford student would be like a nerd that's also very approachable and like curious about the world and like is kind of quirky and likes to do a lot of things like hike or play the guitar and whatever. Yeah, so there's a lot of like quirky people. Usually it's wholesome. I can't speak to the entirety of the university because it's like thousands of people, but they're like, that's what they try to advertise themselves as. Yeah, and our mascot is the tree.
Compared to some of my other friends who went to like, I say like universities in Europe and like the UK specifically, honestly, from what I can tell, it's a lot easier to like make friends here, just because everyone's like forced to live in like student dorms in their first year. You just like have to make friends, you know what I mean? Like everyone on your floor like knows who you are, and you like go to eat in the dining hall with like everyone who lives in the same building as you, and then you just meet new people every day. Like for that first month, you just meet like random people, and then some people become your friends, some people don't. Yeah, I guess that goes more into like the school spirit kind of thing, right, which I understand is a very American thing. I don't.
Yeah, it's quite American.
No, school spirit does not exist like anywhere else in the world, not even in Canada. Like I asked my friend, and school spirit is not a thing. It's like weird because if you've never been to a school spirit before, it's very strange. It's something that like brings everyone together. We're like a huge American football school. This is such a like American thing, but we have like the largest football stadium in the US, which is crazy to think about, that the largest football stadium is at a like university and not like for the NFL. That just means that like every game day, like literally 120,000 people go to watch. That's more than like people like support the school even if they've never been to the school. It's like crazy.
So very American, basically.
Yeah, very, very American, and like really, but then it like it gives everyone like at least that base level of like just something you could talk about and like bond over, because it's like something everyone experiences. Even if you don't like sports that much, it's just fun to go. From what I can tell, I think there's like a club for almost every minority, at least those that are like represented well enough. For example, like in terms of like the Asian community, you'll find like the Vietnamese Student Association, Korean Student Association, Chinese, Filipino. I think there's a Malaysian community as well, but then I guess like some smaller communities. Like, okay, so the Vietnamese community is kind of a unique community, I would say, since without getting like too political, it's like it is split into like Vietnamese international students and like Vietnamese American students, because of like the whole, you know, like the history of how Vietnamese American students or like Vietnamese Americans came to be. So this is like very specific, but like the Vietnamese Student Association at my school uses like the South Vietnamese flag in their logos and stuff like that, which like to us like Vietnamese international students is like really bad, you know, like.
Right. Oh, see, that's quite interesting.
I wouldn't really say it's like a conflict, but it's definitely like a difference. And especially for Vietnamese international students, like that flag is like bad, or maybe not bad, but like controversial.
Right. And would you say it's because of the location you're in, or like, do you think this experience could be like universal across like America?
I would say my school is probably one of the schools with like, or like where that political divide is like less visible. I think some other schools I've heard have like that divide is like very clear, you know, like basically like no one in the Vietnamese Student Association will be Vietnamese international, will all be Vietnamese American. But at least like at my school, it's a bit less divisive, I guess.
So like, is there any tension between like the two associations, or is
it's more nuanced than that. It's not really like us versus them. Of course, like whenever we like they host an event that just celebrates like Vietnamese culture, like that's all there is to it. You know, we should all just celebrate like our culture and our heritage, despite having such like different upbringings. That is something to think about. It's like a very specifically Vietnamese international thing.
So what was like the most surprising thing when you arrived to your new university, and like were there any culture shocks you experienced?
I went to an international school. I had like friends from around the world, you know, and I want to say like well aware of like the world. A lot of they're not okay, maybe not a lot, but a few people I meet here, they're very, very smart, right?
Right.
Like they're extremely smart to have like be able to like take these classes and like do these courses and like study the things that they're studying. Some people have a lack of like world awareness because of like their position in being, but you know what, it makes sense because like put yourself like in their shoes. If you live in the US, it's like really hard for her to be a reason to like want to know more about the world. But it's just interesting when, you know, I guess some people could like never identify like Ukraine on a map until like a month ago.
Yeah, I came in to the US like kind of like a wide-eyed undergraduate student. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna come and America's gonna be so great. I'm gonna love it. I mean, for the most part, I do love it, but it was an adjustment. I don't think that English was a big barrier for me because, you know, I did IB, and like, I think that the level of language education in Poland is fairly good. So that wasn't too hard. I know a bunch of like international students that like struggle with the language a little bit more, but I think that with the prep work that you have like in Poland, you should be fine. In terms of like the culture, I can speak to just like California culture. It was kind of an adjustment, and I think for me especially, since like most of my friends are American, like most of it was like about me not getting a certain cultural reference or something from childhood that they knew about and I didn't. So it does make you feel a little bit like an outsider, but generally people are friendly enough so you can still like be part of that community. But like the biggest adjustment for me was the mindset, which I think is like is very American, which is like when you're applying to like internships, like you literally, I was applying to internships as a freshman, right? And I didn't have any experience yet, and I didn't really know anything, and I was applying to all these like computer science internships, and I barely even started to study computer science, but I still had to like send in a resume and like try to make people believe that I was like, you know, good enough and that I deserved to be there. And it was really hard for me to put myself in that mindset because I was like thinking, oh my God, I didn't prepare enough. I wasn't ready enough. How do I even tell you that I'm good enough for you to actually hire me? But I think that what is very valuable, the lesson that I learned in this culture is that, you know, it's fine to understand that you have shortcomings, but and it's not about being completely prepared when you do the work. It's about being ready to learn. So I had to like stop stressing about like having to prepare and like being the perfect person for the job, and just like be ready to just like dive in and like figure it out on the spot, and like be okay with learning on the job. So that was like a big culture shift for me, where I thought that in Poland, you're always like, you know, you have to prepare all your life to ask for an opportunity. And even then you kind of have to be like shy about like, oh, I'm not sure if I deserve this opportunity, but like, can you have me? So, you know, being more confident about like asking for help, being more confident about asking for what you want, that was a big adjustment.
I've got like one more short question. Did you need to apply for the visa? And like, if you did, like, when did you do so? During the application, or like when you already got the information that you got into the school?
So I think you have to first get into the school in order to apply for the visa, because the visa that you're going to be applying, I think most of you are going to be applying for, is the F1 visa. Which is a student visa. For Polish citizens, I think it's about like it's valid for 5 years. I don't know if this is completely accurate, but you need an acceptance letter, I think, in order to apply for F1 visa. Something that like gives you proof that you are going to be studying in America, and this is the reason why you're going to America. So I wouldn't be worrying about the visa stuff before or during application. Once you get in, the visa stuff is something that you're going to be worrying about, and usually the schools should be reaching out to you about the process, or they also should just have resources on their website in order for you to like see what the process actually is.
And do you have any like final advice or maybe warnings even for like future students who are like willing to apply to your universities?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of advice, like if you want, okay, like I guess application advice, just keep doing things that like genuinely interest you in high school. A lot of people get the impression that you should do things that like impress the university, which is true to a certain extent. But if you're doing them just because you want to impress the university, I think it's very easy for most like people working in admissions to see through that. And they can tell when you're like genuinely passionate about something versus whether you just did it for like, you know, like one summer because you thought it would look good. It's important to research your university. At least for me, I feel like I'm getting like exactly what I expected, or maybe even a little more actually, because there are some things that like pleasantly surprised me as well. But I could understand like some people like didn't research as much as they'd like to, or as much as they should. and then it's like a shock when they get to like the university, and it's like not at all what they expected. Maybe for international students, there's like a picture of like the US college, like the typical one that you would go to.
Right.
And you know what? Maybe that stereotype applies to like most colleges, but maybe not all, you know what I mean? And there are some differences between them, like mainly like cultural and like social differences.
Right.
And it's just something, it's really, like, to be honest, it's really hard to know beforehand.
So what was like your best method of researching for your university?
Honestly, like go on like university subreddits or I don't know, join like a Discord, or like, I don't know, some universities have like Facebook groups as well. Be part of that community, like even if you're not like physically present, like being part of like the community online and just seeing like what people talk about and like, you know, things that are happening at the university and things like that helps to get you like a better picture.
I just say, you know, go for it. Like you're not losing much by applying to the school that you want to. You know, just because the school sounds scary and big or maybe prestigious doesn't mean that, you know, you don't apply. You can always like give it your shot. And if they accept you, they do. And if they don't, then maybe it wasn't a perfect match. I think what I heard was one of the advice was that, you know, what the American schools are doing, they're kind of looking for people to play on their team. It's like kind of like finding the right players, right? It's not necessarily that you're not qualified. You may be just as qualified. It's just about whether it's like a mutual match. It's not that, you know, the universities are trying to see if you're good enough or whatever. It's also about you figuring out whether you match with the school and whether the school is actually something that you want. So I would say, you know, schools are just schools. Try to find a school that, you know, you resonate with, you feel like the culture is something that you want to be a part of, and that the classes and the professors are something that you're interested in, and just give it a shot, and be confident in yourself and your abilities, because I think that probably most students are competent enough to actually like get into the school that they want.